A few years ago, I taught a confirmation group. And I invited all the confirmants to search some of the sayings, some of their favorite sayings, something they heard others talk about or live by, and some of them that they just found meaningful themselves. So they went home, and the next time they came back, one of them brought the following saying back: "Don't wait until you're happy to be grateful, but practice gratefulness, and you will discover yourself to be happy." There is such a deep truth in it. When we wait and hope that other dream to come true and for this to happen and to win the lottery and get the vacation here and there, and we can wait and wait, work ourselves to death, I think that time of full happiness will not just come, but just to look what is in front of us and not take it for granted, but to count it as blessings, to look for what Joanne just shared about, the loving people in our lives, the friends, that our tables are loaded. No one here, I think, has ever gone hungry. Have you? That you really needed to hunger because you did not have food or you didn't have a drink? Well, that puts us at the top 1% of the world population. I know of myself, when I start comparing myself with other people, usually I look up, comparing myself to others who have more and more and more. Do we ever look at those who have less and think of, wow, how blessed we are, not to take the simple things of life for granted? And that is what Brother David Steindl-Rast practices. He has a marvelous TED Talk. So if you ever want to watch a great TED Talk, watch his TED Talk on gratefulness. He also started a website, gratefulness.org. And I subscribe to it, and every morning I get one sentence, just one sentence, a word of the day to think about and to let it sink deeper into you. And he inspires living gratefully. He's a Benedictine monk. He doesn't own a single thing, but he projects a joy, a deep, heartfelt joy that becomes visible in all he does. It doesn't take big things to be grateful for. I've read about a missionary who traveled to Africa. When he returned home, he did not take running water for granted. He actually put a sticky note on his mirror and on the backsplash of the sink to remind him of, don't take it for granted. The simple, the small things, to stop, to look, and to enjoy, that is wonderful and beautiful to do. Now, these people that we just heard about in the scripture came to Jesus. And they asked Jesus for a miracle, even though Jesus had done already a miracle by feeding those 5,000. And they come again to Jesus and ask him, how is that with the food? And Jesus makes this beautiful thing. He says, you have your bread. And the people of Israel in the wilderness, when they were hungry, God gave them manna. He fed them with daily bread. They had enough to sustain them through the days, through the weeks, through the months, and through the years. But there is something different about not just thinking of your physical body to be nurtured. There is something about your soul being fed, your soul being nurtured. And that happens in relationship with Jesus. And that happens in relationship with those who love us, those who are close to us. There is a kind of food for your soul that you cannot eat just like bread and soup and dinner. There is a food for your soul that the living one can provide you when you open up. And that is the bread of life that Jesus says, when you are connected with me, your hunger, your longing will be satisfied, and you will not go thirsty. Lori Gottlieb, a therapist, she wrote a book about maybe you should talk to someone, and it is an invitation from a colleague of her to go and see someone herself. Because her boyfriend of 2 years had broken up with her, she was in her early 40s, she had hoped to marry him, and there she was, everything falling apart. So maybe you should talk to someone. She writes about her own experience of going to therapy and finding healing. And one of the images she uses in that book is where she describes herself how she went to see Wendell, her therapist. And Wendell projected back to you, I sense, Lori, you're like in a prison cell, shaking on those iron bars. But the door is open. Sometimes we get caught in things. But to let go, to step back, there may be another opening. Step back. To look out of our daily routine, out of our habits. There are good habits, we do things, but I think sometimes we forget to step back, to open up, and to surrender and let it go. I deeply believe that is what worship is about. And I love this one verse from Philippians that we have just heard about. And it's the newer translation of the Messge. How amazing it is when Christ replaces worries at the center of your life. Don't you think that makes a difference? And how does it happen? Well, whatever I get caught up in, whatever I worry about, wherever I feel like shaking the doors or pounding something, to surrender, to hand it over, to let it go, just like the Serenity Prayer invites us to. And then our scripture, the psalm says, make a joyful noise unto the Lord. Have you ever seen those football players dance after a touchdown? Have you seen them? That is joy-filled, my friends. You see them dancing. It's the same dancing that Miriam, after God delivered them through the Red Sea, Miriam, Moses' sister, they're throwing a dance. They're shouting, rejoice. Joyful noise, rejoice. They're having a party. So you see me sometimes dancing here, you feel like, oh my golly day, he's doing it again. There is something about joy that we're invited to tune into. And when King David, well, I think that's not here. When King David fought with the Israelites and they overcame and defeated the Philistine, and they returned the Ark of the Covenant, the most holy place where God's 10 Commandments were placed in, as God's rule for God's people. Philistines had stolen it. They got it back. And David was in such a frenzy. He danced through the streets naked, my friends. That's exactly what people thought. He has gone crazy. He has gone crazy. But he was so excited, so fulfilled, and he had the ecstasy so full of it that he got himself in trouble with it. So no recommending to follow his example in that regard. But the true worship isn't worship really about losing yourself, opening up, letting go, surrender to the greater power of God, where the small little things don't matter anymore, but where you can release, be relieved, and open up to the great power of God. You know, there is a deep truth that we always have a choice. We always have a choice. And you can nurse a grudge, or you can count your blessings. And think about nursing the grudge. You hold it and you feed it. And generally, what you feed, what you pay attention to, you grows. It's just a basic principle of life. What you pay attention to will grow and develop. If you hold a grudge and nurse it, it will grow and get bigger, and you'll be caught up in it. If you let it go and count blessings, the blessings will multiply and you will see it. It makes a difference in you. Irving Berlin, in the 50s, he wrestled with insomnia. He was struggling, and one night he was so deep into that they called his personal doctor to come and help him. And he came. And the physician told him, count your blessings instead of counting sheep. Count your blessings. It became a song that, anyone remember? You do? Yes. It became one of the most beautiful songs in the movie White Christmas. It makes all the difference when you count your blessings. So my question to you, will you count your blessings, and when and how will you practice gratefulness, gratitude? It's one of the greatest things you can do. Will you join me in doing that? Count your blessings and practice gratefulness. My friends, it'll change your life.